You're listening to the Mark Bradford Alchemy for Life podcast.
Did you stop measuring? You didn't stop, did you? Well, hey there. Welcome back. How have you been? Yeah, don't you hate when they do that in like YouTube channels? I've mentioned this before where people are like, hey, everyone, what's up? Well, you can't answer that. Don't ask me questions I can't answer, Mark. Sorry. It was a transgression. It won't happen again. I guess we ask people how they've been, how they are, because we're measuring it, right? Oh, that was a really poor segue. Well, so today's podcast is about not just measuring, but when you stop measuring. So did you? Did you stop measuring? Measuring what, you're asking, right? Well, anything and everything. So remember that we sort of have all these programs running, right? All this stuff is going on that we don't even realize in this miraculous thing we call a brain. We always have programs running that, are keeping us from danger. If we have something we're interested in, we're on the lookout for that sort of thing. It always piques our interest. If you're single, you're looking. That's a program that's always running. You don't go, oh, I should probably check out the room to see if there's anyone who seems age appropriate and single and of the proper gender for me. Yeah, that's just running, just like everything else, right? Just like even your sense of smell. You may be sensitive to a certain smell that you really like, and that program is running as well. So we're always sensing and tasting and sampling and measuring. But then there are also things that we actively measure, right? I mean, there's things that we have to go, okay, I need to measure this because it's stuff that our senses sort of can't measure automatically. And I say sort of because an interesting example of that, one of the most prominent examples of measuring and stopping measuring is your health and your weight. If you are trying to lose weight, you may enlist the help of Mr. Scale. Hi, I'm Mr. Scale. I'm going to disappoint you dramatically today. If you're doing that, there are a lot of people that say, hey, it's not based on weight, I mean, I'm sort of a thick-boned person. I mean, I weigh a lot more than people think I do just because maybe I'm half Sicilian, maybe there's some other reason, but maybe I'm built for physical labor, but I just decided to do something else with my life. I don't know. But weight has always been a weird thing with me. People always underguess it by 20 to 25 pounds. So you may say, well, the scale's not accurate, but it is for measuring purposes. It's one of the many ways you measure something, just like the way that you sense your well-being, which is an entire podcast on its own. But you sense your well-being, but sometimes you need external measurements for this well-being, right? I mean, you can't say, well, I better go take that test to see if I'm happy. But yeah, like there are certain things that you may have to do to measure your happiness, to measure your weight. And if you're in the middle of weight loss, you may be afraid to get on the scale. Look, I wanted to lose a few pounds because I didn't like the way I was feeling. And I was eating right and putting like 60 to like 90 miles on my bike every week. And I was the heaviest I'd ever been. And I was so frustrated. I thought, I'm not talking to the scale ever again. That's it. We're done. No, I didn't throw it away. But I stopped talking to him. I'm like, well, this measuring doesn't work. And then I started to make different changes. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to measure. And I measured and I applied myself to something else. And then I started to lose weight. And I started to make a difference on it. And then I thought, I'm just going to do this every single day. And that's going to give me the feedback to understand what I did or didn't do the previous day. Because weight loss is one of those things that's so confusing. And you can say, well, if you just eat less. But no, that's not true. I went on a diet that I had gone on a long time ago. I had mentioned called the 4-Hour Body Diet, in which I ate so much dang food. I ate a lot. And then on your cheat day, you eat like really like gross stuff and a lot of it. And it's so good. And I lost a lot of pounds that way. I lost a lot of weight that way. And so it's not just what you eat. It has to do with composition. It has to do with muscle mass. It has to do with all that stuff. And so this is sort of me proving myself wrong of saying, well, don't just rely on a scale. But I was measuring. And when I stopped measuring, I was failing. Previous to that, where I said, no, Mark, you just have to look at the scale. The scale's not lying, right? I mean, you can't look in the mirror and go, wow, I'm so thin and I feel great and I'm going to run 6 miles and not be out of breath. And then the scale says, yeah, you're obese. Well, no, it doesn't get that way, but it is a little bit out of sync. But having said all that, it's understandable that you'll stop measuring. Sometimes we just stop measuring because we just put our hands on our ears and just go, la, 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 I'm not listening, I'm not seeing. And that, for someone like me, is a cardinal sin. Because I think most people have the same data coming in through the big thing on their shoulders, the thing that has all the data ports on it, all your, the big sensor pod, I call it, your head, you have your eyes, your ears, your taste, your smell. All that stuff is right here, and we kind of point it at things and go, detecting, right? Measuring. But there's 2 components to that. There's the data measuring devices, and someone may have a more sensitive nose than someone else, and with size comes great responsibility. So I have quite the nose, so I have quite the sense of smell, let's say. But there's another part of it, and that is the way you process this stuff. And I'm getting into 3 different topics here on this one measuring concept. But one of the concepts I'm talking about right now about measuring is when it comes to, being on the spectrum of autism. I mean, without getting too detailed, without going into realms I don't belong in, you can have data be a bit overwhelming. And this is something I grew up with my entire life was, you didn't have to yell to communicate with me. I could hear you at a perfectly reasonable rate. I was not a fan of super loud noises. Like, I'd been to a couple concerts and they were fun and stuff, if you're ready for them. But like, there are these people who have what I call the bar voice, where they can order a drink from across the bar. These are the people that they just, I'm not going to do an impression. I'll try not to. But their volume is set on like 11 all the time. And you're like, can you be subtle? So that has to do with processing of the data. And sometimes you're spending too much effort measuring. So that would be an example of over measuring, where you're constantly measuring. And, that happens for me, where I would have to tone it down. If someone would make some delicious dinner for me, it's not the best idea to dissect it in your mind and go, oh, this has this, and this. They want to know that, they want you to go, this is really good, honey. They don't want you to dissect it into the 20 parts of it and understand that you put, some sort of tiny little spice in that wasn't supposed to be noticed. So we need to live in that middle area, right? Where we're not ignoring our perceptions, but we're also dealing with them in a responsible way that says, okay, I get it. I see this. I hear this, but there's not a lot I can do about it. For me, it's typically been, I'm around regular human beings. They're not going to notice this. They're not going to care. Bringing it to their attention is A, going to annoy them, or B, have them think I'm oversensitive. And so I spent a lot of time living in the shadows and not telling people the things I noticed, which is when I then came up with the whole seek first to understand, and about how perception is such a gift to us. And that's when I realized what my gift, you could say, was to notice things from a perspective most people didn't, and then kick in the other skill of analyzing, maximizing, realizing, distilling, explaining, which is what this podcast is about, right? But now it's become mainstream to say you are a sensitive person, although the term for that is typically, there's a different term for that. I've seen it on social media, but I think for the most part it's HSP, highly sensitive person. And so people like that are typically treated as people who are, okay, give them a little bit of a break, while I had the opposite experience of being, oh, you're too sensitive. Well, no, I just notice things and feel things. I take things to heart. I notice things. I feel things. I sense things. but it's in relaying that to other humans. So I guess the podcast is kind of turned into 3 separate directions. First of all, are you giving up on measuring something because you're not seeing results? Sometimes you have to measure through the frustration. 2, are you giving your sensor pod, your head, all your senses, are you ignoring that data? Which reminds me of a joke I made a long time ago about how people hang like literally CDs and sparkly things from their rearview mirror, which is like front and center. And like, how do you drive where that's where you're going to run someone over, right? So how do you drive when this thing's flashing and sparkling at you? Oh, you just ignore that. You just create a blind spot for yourself. Oh, super. That's smart. So are you ignoring your senses? Because we could do a whole podcast on exploring different senses, and perhaps we should. And finally, are you a highly sensitive person? And, you know, the experiences I've had for half a century says that's a real thing. I've experienced it. I've had to kind of hide it. And then the other part of me that says, oh, come on, stop. Don't be so sensitive. But it's not about being too sensitive or saying, hey, I'm going to impose this on you. It's just simply going, no, I just noticed that. That's all. You know, like candles. Some people love to have lots of candles burning. For other people, it gives them a massive headache. It's that sort of thing. So consider those points and let me know. Are you highly sensitive? Does this all sound silly to you? Did you stop measuring? Is there something in your life that's extremely important for you to measure? And let me know, because I always appreciate your feedback, and I apologize for going over my self-imposed 10-minute limit. Thank you. Hey there, thanks for listening. You know I always appreciate your feedback. Please keep it coming. 3 Voices is out. It's a fun read at only $9.99 US on Amazon. And as of this recording, it reached number 3 in experimental psychology. So thank you so much.